Welcome to the Demons Hunters podcast. I'm Preston.
I'm Nico.
And I'm Ben.
Last time we kind of discussed on what got us interested in the paranormal, why we started investigating the experience that we were having. We introduced two entities, one that we referred to as the bigger entity, and the other one we called Little Dude that we dealt with a lot in the beginning of our investigations. And today we're going to touch up on the bigger entity and what we encountered with him in the beginning and the research we were able to do on him, and then the interactions that we used from that with him to confirm his identity.
This was the turning point of it all.
It really was. It was kind of crazy, especially once we figured out exactly who he is.
So yeah, we knew that he was somewhat more powerful than the other entities that he brought with him, that accompanied him, that
Other entities that were just around.
yeah, we knew that he was definitely bigger. And through some of the interactions that we had, me in particular, dealing with him daily, we were able to do some research, come up with some theories, and then at some point confirm it. And like, for one of the most intense interactions where I learned a lot about like his personality type was definitely one where he appeared in my room, and while I was just laying down trying to go to bed.
So, in what way did he appear though?
He appeared in his demonic form, and this was pretty like far into getting to like know who he was and what he was there and why he was there and why he was like latched onto me.
Yeah,
and that was
why to the audience who doesn't know, what is a demonic form? The forms of what demons can take on.
We might as well describe him real quick of the first time you saw. Well, let's go through the few times you've actually seen him. Like, what would he look like not the first time you saw him, because we already explained that when he was at the top of the stairs, but the second time.
so like, for example, like the second time I saw him where there was different features, because as time went on he showed me more of like his features. Before, like when I first started seeing him, it was just a solid black figure, and then occasionally like I would start to see like some like facial features, more features and like skin tone, like more like a clear vision of what he actually looked like instead other than just the shape. So the first time was just the shape. The second time I could like see more like facial features, like the sinking of his cheekbones, eyes, things like that. And as time went on, it would progress and progress. And so demonic forms, we believe demons, at least the more powerful ones, can take two different forms. One more humanoid, what you would think a person would look like, just a normal person. But the demonic form, I believe they would just use that as like a way to get whatever they're looking to feed off of: disgust, fear, anger, things like that. And knowing him, he was definitely feeding off of fear and anger. So, but like as I was saying about like the one where I gained the most like knowledge about like who he was, like personality wise, is when he appeared in my room, and this is when I confronted about who I thought he was at the same time. But I asked him, why are you like attacking me? And one of the very few times in the beginning where he actually responded to a question while he was manifested, I remember him just saying, being pretty much not word for word, but your fucking willpower and your hopefulness is disgusting. He hated it, because I'm a very hopeful person. I like to stay positive. So, and he did not like that.
Well, we should probably backtrack a little bit and not get too far ahead of ourselves. That's for when we reveal who he is.
Yeah, but like, for example, like those like interactions like that were like the things that we were gathering information on and being able to do some research.
But again, what did he look like?
Elaborate?
What did he look like when you saw him?
Oh, like when I saw him?
That's what I was asking originally.
So figure, wise, he had like really weird, like, it's hard to explain. Like his lower body, his legs were kind of really like almost like mixed between goat and bird. It was weird. Really long toes. His arms were really long. His fingers were really long. He was so tall.
What? Oh, you had like what, an 8 or 9 foot ceiling, maybe a 10-foot ceiling, and he had to slouch.
Yeah.
So you could see all of him.
Yeah, in his demonic form, to see all of him, he was like slouching. Kind of hunched over, arms dangling, head facing straight up almost always. And like his head was just a head with some hair.
And you always described him to have sunken in eyes, just like pits, and a mouth that was just a pit.
Yeah. When I could see more features of him, sunken in eyes, and like, as you said, pit for eyes and a mouth. It was terrible.
And that is what we refer to as his demonic form. Because through our investigations, we learned that demons can take different forms. They can make you, or they can appear to you as they please. So my theory is that they take a shape that is going to scare you, because they want to feed on those negative emotions.
So as other interactions, just like that, we would gather information off of him. Like, so we were able to figure out that what he didn't like, what he would like to feed off of, and just like some of the things that he would do and say. Like he would almost never like directly interact with me physically, only occasionally when I kind of pushed the limit a little bit. And he didn't really show himself too often, especially when people were around.
Yeah, that is very true. I mean, for a long time, it was just you that seen him. And then me and Joey saw him that one time ever.
And in the beginning,
For a
he would
long
mostly
time.
refuse to interact to any of us besides you.
We'd try to egg him on to interact with us, and he just refused.
He was pretty focused on one thing at a time for the most part.
Things definitely changed after a while, but it took probably close to 6 months to a quarter or 3/4 of a year for him to interact with anyone but you.
Yeah.
And like there was for some reason, he would show himself to you when others were around, but others would not see him.
Yeah.
I remember before we figured out who he was, though, and there was one time that we were all just kind of out. We weren't even paranormal investigating, but when we were just longboarding on a trail, and I remember seeing this thing behind a tree, and I watched it. It's big, very big, and it was wider than the tree. But I watched it go behind the tree and just disappear.
Yeah.
And I looked at you, and I was like, was that the thing that's been following you around? And you said no, but your eyes, they were like, because you didn't want to scare everyone by saying yeah, but your eyes were saying, yes, that is it.
Just the sheer feeling of when that entity was around, you knew it was him. Like once you kind of knew what you were looking for, like you know when he was around. There was a certain feeling, like I don't know, in the air, like a weight.
Well, like every demonic presence to me affects me differently, and that's how I can tell what is around. No 2 demons have ever given me the same sensation. That sensation, though, from that particular demon, there's nothing like it. There's only been one demon that has scared me more. One.
Yeah. We never even quite figured out what that one was and what that was, but
that's a ways down the line, though.
Yeah.
That was more recent times.
Yeah. But so through our research, we had so many theories, like what demon would this be? What like ranking of demon? What it, like how do we start figuring this out? He came up with some theories, like maybe he's not like necessarily like a really powerful like ranked demon, and maybe he's just like a subordinate of another one type deal, or is he the commander, or is he like a commander? Like he is definitely like one of the big boys.
What even made us delve into researching like demonology in the like kind of biblical aspect?
It was due to how strong he was and like the feeling he gave and just how he was kind of able just to kind of do as he pleased.
Yeah, even when like we use like things that you would expect people to use when like a demonic entity is being somewhat aggressive, or you're trying to piss them off like that. One of the first times we investigated, and I told him, in the name of God, show yourself, and I got punched in the chest.
And I got scratched on the back.
Yeah, he just did not give two shits, and he attacked.
Yeah.
Did nothing to him.
They don't like anything from like Christianity or anything like led us to believe, you know, like they're to look into like on the lines of biblical senses.
Yes.
Just like I guess we just thought to go to the most common and just start from there to search any information.
We did a little bit of Bible searching, just searching like just different stories. And that is one of the ways that we actually discovered who he is through one of the stories. We'll get to that though. And then just internet research on different demons, different powerful demons, trying to see if we can match any of the pieces together on feelings or things that this particular demon did and using what he looked like.
And it was actually quite difficult to have like a best guess, because like even from our research we weren't 100% sure on who this demon was, because on all these demons there were such drastically different stories about them, like what they do, what they look like, why they're aggressive, why they're not so much aggressive and more like play mind games rather than physical games, depending upon the demon.
It took me and you like probably a month of research to finally come to a consensus on who this demon probably was. We weren't even 100% when we full sent. Well, when you full sent it, and just said his name to him.
Yeah, that was definitely a lot of time and effort put into it, but it did pay off to an extent, and we were able to have more of a clear idea of what type of demon we're dealing with and a list of names that would possibly line up with who he was.
Yeah, it took a long time, that's for sure. Especially because back then I was still in school at this point, and you guys were just, job working constantly.
Yeah.
So it's like we were all pretty busy at a constant, and but we figured it out over time. And just me and Preston were always bouncing ideas off each other. Like when we had a second, we'd always text each other like, "Hey, I found this in my research." And whenever we were all hanging out pretty consistently at this point in time too, and especially me and Preston, and we were always bouncing ideas off each other.
Yeah, and it pretty much devolved for quite a bit of time where it was work, sleep, eat, investigate, research.
Yes, that's pretty much what our lives were when we were in this period of time.
Because we basically opened Pandora's box.
Oh, we 100% did.
Oh yeah.
And this is what opened it, was saying his name to him.
So now all of us has gone pretty much our whole lives just like as normal, as it gets pretty much, right? And now, to us at least, we have some form of confirmation that not only the paranormal exists, but like basically a whole other world. Like there's so much we just don't know and still don't know. And now all of a sudden, just like the confirmation of demons exist to us.
The confirmation of a lot of things. We had got confirmation of so many things all at once.
It reacts negatively to Jesus, like the word Jesus, making God. That raises so many questions.
Does
religion itself and how it's
exactly like, does that mean that Christianity is true? Like the Christian faith in general, like all the religions that believe in Christianity. Does that mean that they're all the closer religions to being correct, or what?
And we'll definitely dive deep into that way later on, way deep into it.
We go pretty far into that one. We have some insane evidence that we'd like to share with you once we can.
Yeah, but it's best to do things in the order of which they happened.
When they fell. Each domino has a big story behind it. Okay, so now we'll talk about. Is it recording? Okay. So now we'll talk about how me and Preston determined it definitely wasn't a weaker demon that didn't have a name. Even through Bible study or demonology research, none of them added up. So we started looking into demons that had names in the Bible, and what really drew us in was the 7 deadly sins from demonology research. And there was a story that we found, or that I think it was you that found it, right, Preston?
Yeah.
And you have it, so I'll let you kind of read it.
The story is so this demon, and the one story I found that made me look into him was it fell in love with another demon named Sarah, which is the daughter of Ragu, another high-ranking demon. And the story goes he couldn't have her, but and she had 7 successive husbands, but he killed them each and every time on their wedding nights, preventing her from having a husband, somebody that she loved, out of jealousy.
And which adds up to the 7 deadly sin that he is linked to,
which is
his father.
But he wasn't necessarily identified with his father a whole lot more. He was
That is very
identified
true.
with another sin,
The sin of wrath.
the sin of wrath.
But his father was the sin of lust.
Yes. And another story that I found on with him is he seemed to be somewhat aggressive if provoked. So this also kind of like made me like be like, okay, this is a definite possibility. So like there was a story, I didn't look too deep into it. It was just like one of the stories I read, but apparently back in whatever century it was, there was a exorcism that was happening for a demonic entity that was possessing some, I think it was a female, middle-aged, if I remember correctly. I haven't been able to find the story since, but they went to go perform an exorcism on her because she was having symptoms of demonic possession and typical stuff, like, you know, speaking in different tongues, crazy shit. But nothing like really aggressive before this. And when they went to go perform the exorcism, apparently it was successful, but during the exorcism a lot of the people died, including the person. So I mean, the demon left, but the person died. The only 2 people that ended up living was one of the nuns and the priest that conducted it. I think it said there was 7 or 8 casualties total in that story. So
I don't quite remember. I remember you reading the story to me because you found it when me and you were both doing research in your car.
He did things to freak people out, cause a lot of negative emotions, but he was never aggressive until provoked, which kind of lined up with something that we noticed with him. He wasn't really physically aggressive until he poked the bear too much. And going on that, I started looking more into this demon, and with like the things that he said and what he disliked about me. And here I can pull up the things really quick that it says he really did not like, or the things that he brought. He was also known as the demon of lechery, jealousy, anger, and revenge. So he liked jealousy, anger, revenge, like things that you would do out of like a fear or anger. Like jealousy comes from fear. It's directly related in my eyes.
I agree. Fear of, from a relationship standpoint. When you get jealous, it's because you're fearful that someone's going to take your significant other away from you. That's why you get jealous of them.
So, after doing a whole bunch of research into this, he definitely came to a conclusion of which one it was mostly likely to be. And the night I confronted him about this was quite interesting, because when you speak to a demon and it responds to you and it confirms something you say, you can't believe it. You don't know whether it's true or not at all. You're like, you could just be messing with me, especially with this demon being so high ranking. And I just remember so clearly, when I looked at him and I said, why me, Asmodeus? And he laughed with glee and like joyfully said, so you finally figured it out. I'm assuming he was just watching us do research and just being like, well, good luck. But when he did that, my blood ran cold. Because, I mean, even though I wasn't able to fully believe it at that point in time, it felt so genuine that he was like, you got it. You were right. I am the demon Asmodeus, the son of lust.
And with that, we did some research on Asmodeus. And we found out that Satan was afraid of him because of how powerful he was. So he was banished from hell in what demonology says 2014 he got banished from hell to earth.
Yes.
And
this started happening in 2018, so 4 years after this happened,
and
that he was supposedly banished.
I believe in the demonology that we researched, he was in Missouri in 2014 when this was found out.
Yeah, and like they had some type of thing that happened where they were certain that the demon Asmodeus was causing activity, or whether it be just a haunting, a possession, or an attachment. I don't remember quite what the story was.
I believe it was a possession.
Yeah.
And they were a cult, though. Like a cultist got possessed. And
that's it. That was right.
yeah, a cultist got possessed by him. And he explained to this cult that worshipped him who he was and what is going on with him. And so we actually I believe we found that story in more than one location too. And that's what made it very viable.
Yeah.
Is that it was not just one like article or anything like that. It was published by multiple people, that this demon had been around starting in 2014 and had been kind of moving around the US.
Did we follow his tracks back here where we live in Utah?
Yes, we followed his tracks back to a place called Kay's Cross.
Yes.
And I believe that's where you picked him up. Actually, we got confirmation of that at one point.
Yeah, because when we went back there and investigated at some point, one of the entities there was like, we asked a question involving Asmodeus, and it was like, no, go away, pretty much. Don't want him around here again. You got him, take him with you.
Yeah, it was like, we don't want him back. I don't quite remember what the recording said. Eventually we'll have to find it. But that'll probably be when we talk about that investigation.
So in these stories, though, or in demonology, we tracked him back to Utah. How? I forgot.
We actually tracked him back to Utah through paranormal investigations. We tracked him back by asking questions at different locations. We got a lot of responses saying, I don't know, or just no responses.
Because like he would pop up in different places all over. But almost all of them were in America, and most of those had more than one stories on them from different sites. So they were more viable, where the ones outside of America were kind of hit and miss.
But all the ones in America were always where cultist activity took place. All of them. And the demon of jealousy going to a place where a man believed he was Jesus kind of adds up a little bit.
Yeah, and that person was killed out of anger and jealousy.
Anger, jealousy, and fear.
Yes.
So it kind of adds up that the demon related to those feelings would wind up there. And it's a actually decently historical place in Utah.
Yeah.
Wasn't there something specific on, other than just like Satan being fearful of Asmodeus' power? Wasn't there like just like a tipping point to why he banished him?
Asmodeus, I believe, challenged him.
Asmodeus, like demons can and get stronger and weaker depending upon the conditions that have happened, where he has a lot of cults that follow just Asmodeus. Like, and that might be something to do with it. From demonology standpoint, they say that he was getting stronger, and Satan was fearing that he was getting close to being able to dethrone him and overpower him.
I believe Asmodeus made it known to Satan that that was his objective, and Satan banished him to Earth before that came to pass. And through our research and what we've experienced, the longer a demon spends on Earth rather than hell, the weaker they get.
That is also true unless there are certain conditions met.
Yes, which we will dive into at a later date.
And this is where things really kicked off with investigating, because once this happened, little dude became more aggressive, and which was not good because he was definitely more physical than Asmodeus was by a long shot. And he was around more often, and not to mention he freaked me out way more, just like how he looked and how he moved.
Especially the sound effects that he made.
The sounds that he made when he moved, it was terrible. I hated it so much.
Like, straight up like sound effects out of a movie type shit.
It really started to create some more dangerous moments that we had and a lot more activity around me and my daily life and around even you guys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, out of all the demons that we've encountered, Little Dude's probably by far the most aggressive, like toward me. Demons haven't really touched me that much, but even Little Dude has scratched me.
Even out of demons that are like attached to me, Little Dude is more aggressive than they are. Little Dude is probably one of the most aggressive demons we've ever come across.
Oh yeah, definitely one of the top 10 at least, if not top 3.
I'd say top 3, personally. But that's through my personal experiences.
So, this is when investigating kind of became more regular for us to an extreme, like it was almost every day of the week, if not every day of the week. And we were spending a lot more time out doing it. When we would go out, we would spend hours and hours doing it.
We'd go out right as it turned dark, and we wouldn't end until 2 in the morning.
2, 3 o'clock in the morning.
And now the places we started going to, just not just a hop, skip, and a jump. Starting to get further and further.
Yeah, and those places we thought to be cold spots, when they were originally hot spots, have gotten more active.
Yeah.
Which is kind of terrifying.
And that's when Trailhead really started to kick off, as we explained, like the place that we went to the most, especially in the beginning, the place that we called the Trailhead. For some reason, Asmodeus took a liking to it, and for some reason, that place came heavily demonic.
He definitely made that his domain. That was where he was.
He's so close to your parents' house where you lived at the time. And on top of it, it had to be just already spooky at night.
Yes, of course.
Definitely playing games, man.
It was definitely mind games in all reality.
Yeah. And not to mention, like, there was some like historical value to that place. It was right next to a stream, so rushing water,
which normally draws paranormal. I wouldn't say demonic energy, but paranormal, that's for sure.
Yeah, and like it was right next to an old military site, Fort Bonaventura. If you look it up in Utah, it's a pretty popular place. A lot of history there. They
also do a lot of historical reenactments, which to my knowledge actually does draw in paranormal from those who have lived that. It draws their energy there.
And even there, we occasionally got something that wasn't demonic on recording, because there especially, we would catch way more demonic things on
I'd say at
recording
least
pictures.
90% of the time it was demonic.
Yes, and very aggressive things were said. They would threat, they would say things, they would manifest, they would move around, they would touch us. It was pretty intense there.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that really came to light with discovering who Asmodeus was and what we were dealing with, the intensity of the paranormal happenings definitely ramped up a lot. They were happening about the same amount of frequency, but for example, little dude got way more physically aggressive, and that was a big deal for me. But for the most part, things didn't happen more often.
In terms of not more often, so after, obviously the information is relayed to me that we have the confirmation of what this is, how do you comprehend that it's just some normal, like, coming of age man, barely turning an adult? You have, okay, Asmodeus, he's in pop culture and biblically, that's a big name, and now all of a sudden I'm supposed to process that, and I've been investigating with Preston and Ben like every night now. But strangely enough, they keep telling me all these things are ramping up in their lives and having physical encounters, mostly Preston. Not much for me other than like I start to notice feelings and all that, but nothing really crazy has happened. A lot of my most experience is just listening to recordings and getting responses and the intelligent speed of these responses. This is so new and bizarre, like just going on as if life was normal and then suddenly like, oh yeah, by the way, as far as I know, demons exist. And that just, it's just mind-boggling. And it was just me trying to figure out what was going on. Later on, I do get more experiences. But for now, we're listening to what Ben has to say.
All right. For me, the activity that I was experiencing spiked so heavily. It went from just being once every week to 2 weeks to every single night. There were multiple occasions, pretty much every time after we'd gone investigating, Nick would be the one to drop me off because we live very close to each other. And he would always look at me like there's something at your house again. Every single night.
It goes into the feelings. It's like you become attuned almost.
Yes,
it's
we were
that's like always been there, but you just never knew before.
like that feeling of someone's watching you, and you just kind of like, whatever, or danger.
It's kind of like an unused muscle, and now that we were exposed to it a lot, we were using that muscle a whole lot
Exactly.
more.
Which it could be a body's natural response. It's just like, like cats kind of can sense things. It's like an animal response to the
Exactly.
bodies. But for some reason, paranormal, I guess, plays a really big role.
Exactly. And it was crazy because it was starting to happen so much more frequently, where like normally when I would hear it on the occasion, it would just be I hear something or I feel something. But now it was either I hear something or I feel something, like physically, or I see something, rather than just something outside though, where it was like I'd hear like someone talking outside my window. And like I said in the last episode, I lived on the second story. Like I wouldn't hear people talking like it was right next to my window, because no one was right next to my window. And my neighbors were pretty quiet too. I lived in a very quiet neighborhood. But it was getting to the point that nightly I was in my room and I'd hear from like the corner next to my door or right next to my ear whispers or growls. And there was a lot of times that I'd feel something lay down or push on my bed while I was trying to sleep. And it was becoming a nightly occurrence, but it only started right after Preston found out who Asmodeus was. And that kind of threw me for a loop, because it started affecting me after about a week and a half to 2 weeks, it wasn't just at night anymore. It was while I was at school, while I was at work, or just while I was out with you guys. And now I've come to realize that there was one demon that attached itself to me. I don't know where I picked it up, and but it is still attached to me to this day. That was what, 2 years ago, coming on 3?
I'd say just over 3 years now.
Yeah, this is going to be the 4th year now.
Yeah.
Come what? We found out who he was in, was it November or December of 2019?
I believe it was, I want to say it was November of 2019.
Yeah, we found out who it was in,
It was about 1 year into it, because we started investigating.
In 2018.
November 2018, yeah.
No, it was October of 2018.
Oh yeah, October 2018. That's what made us be like,
It was October, a spooky time. We're like, what the heck? And then
why
we
not?
got
Let's
a
go
lot
to
of
the Kids' Cross.
evidence.
It'll be fun. We'll have a good time.
Yeah, so it was October of 2018 is when this all started. And in November of 2019, things ramped up. But this one particular demon, I always know it by the presence it gives off, like we mentioned earlier. This particular demon was always the one that was pushing on my bed, but I seen it multiple times while I was at work and at school. There were multiple occasions at school where I'd see someone's shadow that I was friends with, and then I'd see it elongate and then something move away and their shadow just be normal. And that happened probably 5 times. Then at work, I'd always see this particular thing, and it was tall and slender. It always gave off the same feeling. I could only describe this feeling as false security. Like, it wanted you to feel comfortable around it, but the presence it gave off just was not comforting, you know? And I'd always see it pretty much every shift I worked, standing in the back room when I first walked in. There was one time I saw it standing right behind my coworker. And that scared me pretty bad because of the how close it was to her. I thought it was going to hurt her.
Yeah. And with this activity ramping up for Ben, a little bit for Nick, not so much, and the intensity ramping up for me, I got a little bit more frustrated with it. I felt a little bit more frightened because I at this point, they were, especially little dude, as I was saying, was very physically aggressive, but he was not shy about it. Other ones, you wouldn't see him, you would end up with a scratch. He would manifest and like come at me, and that was not something I ever want to have happen again, especially with how he moved, what he looked like, the sounds he would make, rushing at you was nightmare fuel. And but with that, I got a little bit more like aggressive back. And one time out in, I guess like the conditions that I was in wasn't the greatest, but Asmodeus had manifested, and he was toying with me. He saying things about personal things in my life that would have obviously upset somebody, like, and I charged at him and went to go tackle him like a retard, and went right through him and hit my dresser pretty hard, or my nightstand, I guess it was. That wasn't fun. So, but after that, I don't know why things changed. We don't have a solid answer, and people have also experienced this. Even people that I know that hadn't even brought up this particular experience had been like, yeah, I did this when I was having a paranormal experience, and I was like, so I'm not alone. And but one particular event. So prior to this, I had this particular incident. I had 2 relationships that had failed. One pretty horribly. The other one was just kind of just sucked. And the more recent one was the one that kind of just sucked. And Asmodeus had appeared to me while I was in my driveway after getting home from investigating. And he said some pretty hurtful things and mimicked the voice of the one that was kind of sucked, and the more fresh one mimicked the voice of the girl. And I just like kind of like stood there, and like this was still pretty fresh, so it hurt pretty bad, and I just told him he should stop. And then the one that really did not end well was a really painful breakup for me, really rough, and he switched gears into her voice, and I'm not going to go into particulars of what he said, but I wouldn't say I was necessarily like wanting to hurt or anything like that. I just wanted him to stop, and I just out of reflex, because he got my face pretty close, like I'm talking like 2 inches from me, and I had reached up and I grabbed him by the throat. Thank you for listening to the podcast. We are
The Demon Hunters.